My friends, we stand today at a crossroads. Every decision we make as individuals, communities, and as a nation carries weight far beyond what we can immediately see. The choices we make today shape the moral, economic, and spiritual future of generations yet unborn. History is not merely a series of events, it is the outcome of decisions made by those willing to lead with wisdom, courage, and integrity. When we fail to act wisely, we leave a legacy of confusion, conflict, and consequences that others must bear. We cannot ignore the truth that nations are held accountable for their actions. Every policy, every law, every cultural shift contributes either to stability and growth or to decay and division. Wise decisions are not merely political, they are moral. They honor the values that sustain society: justice, compassion, honesty, and courage. As citizens, leaders, and members of this community, it is our responsibility to make choices that reflect these principles, even when the path is difficult, unpopular, or misunderstood. Too often, people underestimate the cumulative impact of small decisions. Yet, history shows that even seemingly minor choices can alter the trajectory of entire nations. When integrity is sacrificed for expediency, when truth is compromised for convenience, the nation suffers. Every choice matters, and no decision exists in isolation. A society that tolerates corruption, injustice, and moral compromise is planting seeds of destruction that will grow with relentless certainty. We must also recognize the urgency of the moment. The world around us is moving at an unprecedented pace. Decisions that once could wait now demand immediate action. The future does not pause for indecision, and it will not forgive delay. Whether it's the economy, social justice, national security, or the moral fiber of our culture, the time to act wisely is now. Hesitation and ignorance are luxuries we cannot afford. Finally, accountability must guide every decision. We are not exempt from the consequences of our actions. The strength of a nation is measured not only by its wealth or military might, but by its moral clarity and its willingness to make hard, principled choices. Let us embrace the responsibility to lead with wisdom, courage, and discernment. A nation accountable is a nation that thrives. A nation indifferent is a nation that falters. The choice is ours. Every decision we make carries a weight far beyond what we often recognize. We live in a world where choices can appear small, insignificant, or even routine. But history teaches us a different lesson. The path of a nation, the well-being of communities, and the spiritual health of a people are not shaped by accidents or chance. They are shaped by decisions. Every vote cast, every law enacted, every policy chosen, and even the values we promote in our families sends ripples across time. Choices create consequences, and consequences accumulate. Nations rise or fall not simply because of external pressures, but because of the internal decisions made by their leaders and citizens. This is the hard truth that we must never ignore. Consider the individual level first. Each person has a responsibility to think beyond immediate gratification or temporary convenience. When a parent models honesty, integrity, and diligence, they influence the moral fabric of their children. When a citizen stands for truth, even when it is unpopular, they set a precedent for their community. Small acts of righteousness or negligence, when multiplied across a population, define the character of an entire society. A single choice may seem inconsequential at the moment, but repeated choices, especially when multiplied by thousands or millions, create a collective outcome that can endure for generations. When we apply this principle to governance and national leadership, the stakes become even higher. Decisions about justice, education, economics, and foreign policy are not isolated technicalities. They are moral choices. They shape the trajectory of millions of lives. When leaders compromise principle for expediency, the effects are profound. Policies that ignore the poor, silence the vulnerable, or reward dishonesty do more than inconvenience people. They erode trust, foster resentment, and weaken the social structure that binds a nation together. Conversely, decisions grounded in fairness, compassion, and foresight strengthen society, providing stability and hope for future generations. History provides countless examples of this principle. Nations that once flourished fell because of repeated choices that compromised integrity and neglected wisdom. Decisions that seemed minor at first, tolerance of corruption, dismissal of injustice, indifference to ethical decay, eventually led to widespread collapse. Conversely, nations that prospered often did so because leaders and citizens alike consistently chose righteousness over convenience, vision over short-term gain. The weight of decision-making is not hypothetical, it is concrete. It is measured in the lives affected, the opportunities gained or lost, and the legacy left behind. It is also important to understand that decision-making is not just about avoiding mistakes. It is about actively choosing what is right. Waiting for circumstances to dictate choices is a dangerous path. The strength of a nation depends on proactive wisdom, anticipating consequences, understanding the moral implications, and acting decisively. A single well-considered decision can prevent decades of suffering, while a single reckless choice can trigger crises that reverberate for generations. Wisdom is not optional. It is essential, and it carries responsibility. In practical terms, this means that individuals and leaders alike must be intentional about their choices. Every action, every vote, every policy recommendation, every word spoken in the public square, and even every private decision contributes to the larger picture of a nation's health. Accountability begins with awareness, understanding that our decisions are not confined to the moment, but echo across time, shaping the character, stability, and future of our society. To underestimate the weight of our decisions is to underestimate the power each of us holds to influence the course of history. In the end, a nation's strength is not merely measured by its wealth, military might, or technological achievements. True strength is reflected in the discernment of its people, in the wisdom exercised in every choice, and in the commitment to act with integrity even when the consequences are uncertain. Each decision matters. Each choice counts. Every individual bears the responsibility to weigh decisions carefully, understanding that the destiny of a people is built one choice at a time. Leadership is more than holding a title, managing resources, or making strategic decisions. True leadership carries moral responsibility. Every leader, whether in government, business, community, or even within the family, is accountable not only for the outcomes of their decisions, but also for the character behind those decisions. Leadership is not just about efficiency or popularity. It is about guiding people with integrity, justice, and a sense of higher purpose. When leaders ignore the moral dimension of their role, they may achieve temporary success, but the long-term consequences are inevitable. A society can only rise to the level of integrity demonstrated by its leaders. Consider the leaders who have shaped history, those remembered as visionary, principled, and courageous. What set them apart was not merely their intellect or charisma, but their unwavering commitment to moral responsibility. They understood that decisions have ethical implications and that every choice impacts real lives. They did not pursue convenience, popularity, or expediency at the expense of truth. They recognized that laws and policies are not neutral instruments. They either build society or erode it, depending on whether they are rooted in justice and righteousness. Leaders who compromise on principle, even in small ways, set a dangerous precedent. What begins as a minor moral concession often grows into widespread corruption, injustice, and public distrust. Leadership carries a ripple effect. A single decision made without moral discernment can influence generations. When leaders prioritize selfish interests, ignore accountability, or fail to protect the vulnerable, they send a message to the society they serve that shortcuts, dishonesty, and injustice are acceptable. On the other hand, leaders who consistently act with integrity inspire others to follow suit. They set standards of behavior that extend far beyond their immediate sphere of influence. A community, a nation, even a culture reflects the moral character of those at its helm. Leadership without ethical awareness is like a rudderless ship, directionless, unstable, and vulnerable to storm. It is essential to recognize that moral responsibility in leadership is not passive. It requires courage and discernment. Often, the right decision is not the easiest, the most popular, or the least controversial. Acting justly may invite criticism, resistance, or even personal sacrifice. Yet leadership demands that decisions be guided by what is right, not by what is convenient or advantageous. Ethical leaders weigh the consequences of their choices, asking themselves how their decisions will affect not just the present, but the future. They consider the needs of the marginalized, the voiceless, and the vulnerable. Leadership without conscience leads to injustice. Leadership with conscience leads to trust, respect, and sustainable progress. Moreover, moral responsibility extends beyond major policy decisions. It is reflected in daily choices. How leaders communicate, treat employees, address conflicts, and allocate resources. All of these actions demonstrate character. Consistency in small matters establishes credibility and reinforces the values that underpin ethical leadership. The people follow what they see, not just what they are told. Leaders who embody fairness, honesty, and compassion create an environment where integrity is contagious. Conversely, leaders who tolerate corruption, favoritism, or deception erode the foundation of trust and stability. Finally, moral responsibility in leadership is inseparable from accountability. Leaders are answerable not only to the public, but also to their own conscience and to principles higher than themselves. A leader who ignores moral obligations may achieve short-term gains, but will ultimately invite consequences that undermine authority, erode confidence, and damage society. Leadership is not merely a position. It is a stewardship of influence, power, and opportunity. Stewardship without ethics is destructive, while stewardship with moral clarity creates enduring impact. The call for ethical leadership is urgent. In every sphere of influence, from the highest offices of government to the smallest community decisions, leaders must act with integrity, vision, and moral courage. The strength, prosperity, and stability of a nation depend not only on policies and strategies, but on the character of those who lead. When leaders prioritize principle over popularity and righteousness over convenience, they elevate an entire society, shaping a future that reflects wisdom, justice, and enduring moral strength. It is easy to overlook the small actions we take every day, dismissing them as insignificant or inconsequential. Yet the truth is that no decision exists in isolation. Small choices, when repeated over time and multiplied across a population, shape the moral, cultural, and social fabric of a nation. The accumulation of minor decisions, whether wise or unwise, creates outcomes far greater than any single action could achieve. The danger lies in the fact that people often fail to recognize this truth. They underestimate the power of small compromises, casual dishonesty, or minor ethical lapses, believing they carry little consequence. History proves otherwise. Consider a society in which small injustices are tolerated. Perhaps a law is enforced inconsistently, a public official bends the rules, or ordinary citizens overlook minor acts of wrongdoing. At first, these may seem inconsequential, isolated incidents. Yet, each compromise sends a signal that dishonesty, negligence, or injustice is acceptable. Others begin to mimic these behaviors, and what was once minor gradually becomes systemic. The culture shifts imperceptibly but inevitably toward corruption, apathy, and moral decline. Small actions, left unchecked, accumulate, and the consequences manifest in ways that can destabilize an entire nation. The same principle works in positive ways as well. Acts of integrity, honesty, and compassion, even when small, reinforce a culture of trust, accountability, and collective responsibility. A leader who consistently acts fairly, a citizen who chooses truth over convenience, a community that supports ethical business practices, all contribute to an environment where righteousness flourishes. The cumulative effect of these small, principled decisions strengthens the nation in ways that are often invisible at first. It is the steady accumulation of integrity rather than occasional grand gestures that produces lasting change. The challenge is that small actions are often invisible, yet their consequences are enduring. When a teacher neglects to instill moral values in students, when a policymaker overlooks the long-term effects of legislation, or when ordinary citizens compromise on honesty in daily life, the results are not immediate but inevitable. Over time, these minor lapses erode public trust, weaken institutions, and create conditions ripe for societal failure. The nation may not collapse overnight, but the foundation is quietly weakened. And when a crisis arises, the damage is magnified because the cumulative effects of years of small, overlooked choices have set the stage. Moreover, small actions are contagious. People observe the behaviors of those around them, and they adapt their own choices accordingly. In communities where honesty, diligence, and compassion are consistently modeled, these values become the norm. In contrast, when minor compromises are tolerated or ignored, others adopt the same behavior and the erosion of standards accelerates. This ripple effect explains why societies often rise or fall gradually, not abruptly. Every individual's choices matter because they influence the choices of others, creating a chain reaction that can either strengthen or weaken the nation. Understanding the cumulative impact of small actions demands vigilance, self-awareness, and accountability. It requires asking questions about the ripple effects of our behavior. What example am I setting? What precedent does this decision create? How will it influence others and shape the moral climate of my community or nation? It is not enough to avoid major scandals or dramatic failures. Wisdom lies in consistently choosing integrity in the small, everyday moments. These are the moments that define character, build trust, and shape a society's trajectory. Ultimately, the power of small actions reminds us that no contribution is too minor to matter. Each choice is a building block, a single thread in the larger fabric of the nation. A nation that ignores these cumulative effects risks decline, while a nation that honors the significance of small principled actions lays a foundation for enduring strength, stability, and moral clarity. Every action counts, and the responsibility to choose wisely rests on every citizen and leader alike. In the life of a nation, timing is never neutral. Decisions delayed are opportunities lost, and in many cases, the cost of hesitation is far greater than the cost of action. The challenges we face today, economic uncertainty, social unrest, moral decay, and political division, do not wait for us to feel ready. They demand immediate attention, deliberate thought, and courageous action. Yet far too often, leaders and citizens alike fall into the trap of procrastination, convincing themselves that time will resolve the problem or that others will act in their stead. The truth is that the future does not pause for indecision. Every moment lost compounds the urgency of the next, and the longer we wait, the harder it becomes to reverse the consequences of inaction. The principle of urgency applies to every sphere of influence. When a society delays addressing inequality, injustice, or corruption, the problem grows like a shadow over time, affecting more lives and embedding itself into the culture. When policymakers postpone critical decisions on education, healthcare, or national security, the ramifications multiply and the nation suffers in ways that could have been prevented. Hesitation in leadership is not a neutral stance, it is a decision in itself, one that carries consequences just as weighty as any deliberate action. In the moral and civic life of a nation, delay is a choice with a cost. The urgency of decision-making also demands courage. The right choice is often difficult, unpopular, or controversial. It may challenge powerful interests, confront entrenched systems, or require sacrifices that are uncomfortable. Yet the cost of failing to act wisely in time is far greater than the temporary discomfort of doing what is right. Leaders who procrastinate or avoid hard decisions may gain temporary comfort or approval, but the long-term consequences are often devastating. A crisis ignored today can become a catastrophe tomorrow. Wisdom, therefore, is inseparable from timeliness. Knowing what to do is insufficient. Acting decisively at the right moment is what shapes history. Furthermore, urgency is not simply about speed, it is about discernment under pressure. Acting hastily without thought can be as damaging as waiting too long. The key is to cultivate the ability to evaluate circumstances swiftly, understand potential consequences, and commit to action with courage and clarity. A nation's progress depends on leaders and citizens who can balance careful deliberation with prompt execution. Indecision erodes confidence, delays progress, and invites chaos. Conversely, decisive action guided by principle inspires trust, fosters momentum, and demonstrates leadership at its highest level. Urgency also carries a moral dimension. Delaying justice is itself a form of injustice. Postponing necessary reforms is neglect. Ignoring problems today is a decision to let suffering continue tomorrow. Every moment of delay, every choice to remain silent or inactive is a decision that shapes the destiny of communities and generations. This is why a sense of urgency must permeate not only leadership, but also personal responsibility. Citizens who recognize the stakes must engage actively in their communities, vote wisely, speak boldly, and support policies that advance justice, integrity, and truth. Waiting for someone else to act is a luxury that a nation on the brink cannot afford. The urgency of decision-making reminds us that action is required now. The time to make wise choices is not tomorrow, not when circumstances are perfect, and not when public opinion aligns. The time to act is today. The health, stability, and moral strength of a nation depend on the willingness of leaders and citizens alike to face challenges with courage, clarity, and speed. Delays may seem harmless in the moment, but they accumulate, magnify, and ultimately define the future. Every decision carries urgency because every decision shapes destiny, and a nation that hesitates risks losing the opportunity to secure a future of integrity, justice, and enduring strength. Accountability is the cornerstone of a nation's strength. A society cannot endure, flourish, or maintain its integrity without holding itself, its leaders, and its citizens responsible for actions, decisions, and their consequences. True strength is not measured solely by wealth, military might, or technological achievement, though these have their place. The ultimate measure of a nation lies in its willingness to face truth, accept responsibility, and act in accordance with principle. Without accountability, power becomes abuse, resources become waste, and influence becomes corruption. The health of a nation depends not on the absence of challenges, but on the presence of a moral compass guiding every choice, from the highest office to the smallest community action. Accountability begins with leadership. Leaders are entrusted with authority, not for personal gain, but for the stewardship of a nation's welfare. Every decision they make, policy, budget allocation, legislation, or diplomatic initiative carries consequences that extend far beyond the immediate moment. When leaders act without accountability, when they ignore moral and ethical responsibility, the nation suffers. Corruption, injustice, and social instability thrive in such an environment. Conversely, leaders who consistently act with integrity, transparency, and courage inspire trust, cultivate civic engagement, and strengthen the foundations of national life. Leadership that embraces accountability demonstrates to the nation that choices have consequences, that principles matter, and that moral clarity is non-negotiable. But accountability is not reserved for leaders alone. Every citizen plays a vital role in the moral and structural strength of a nation. Civic responsibility, voting wisely, participating in community service, upholding ethical standards in business, and holding those in power responsible is critical. A society that tolerates negligence, dishonesty, or moral compromise at any level creates vulnerability. Conversely, when citizens demand accountability and model integrity themselves, they strengthen the nation's institutions, culture, and moral fiber. Accountability is a collective responsibility, and the strength of a nation mirrors the character of its people. There is also a direct relationship between accountability and justice. A nation that enforces laws fairly, protects the vulnerable, and ensures equitable access to opportunity demonstrates both strength and wisdom. Justice without accountability is ineffective. Accountability without justice is hollow. Together, they create a society where individuals trust one another, institutions are respected, and decisions are guided by principle rather than expediency. Nations that lack these qualities often experience internal decay, social unrest, and systemic failure. Accountability is the mechanism by which societies maintain coherence, stability, and moral clarity. Furthermore, accountability cultivates resilience. Nations are tested by crises, natural disasters, economic instability, political upheaval, or social tension. A nation that values accountability is equipped to respond effectively because it has cultivated transparency, discipline, and responsibility at every level. Leaders and citizens alike understand that their actions have consequences and are prepared to adapt, correct mistakes, and act decisively for the common good. Without accountability, crises amplify dysfunction. With it, challenges become opportunities for growth, learning, and restoration. Ultimately, accountability is inseparable from national strength because it binds action to principle. A nation that ignores responsibility sacrifices its moral foundation and undermines its future. A nation that embraces accountability cultivates trust, encourages ethical behavior, and demonstrates the capacity for endurance and growth. Every decision, every policy, every choice carries weight, and the willingness to face those consequences defines the strength of the nation. Accountability is not a burden. It is the very essence of leadership, citizenship, and societal vitality. A nation that stands accountable is a nation that stands strong, resilient, and prepared to navigate the challenges of today while securing a legacy of integrity, justice, and enduring prosperity for generations yet to come.